live right now. We're live on Instagram and we're live on Twitter. Uh, for all the Veteran Nation fans, welcome. And new guest to the show, we got John, and he's with United Warrior Alliance, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And you have a really unique story, in some ways a cool story. I know you probably don't think of it that way, uh, but you definitely have a unique story. Um, so let's start off a little bit. So, like me, you're a Marine,
Correct.
and but you were only enlisted, whereas I was enlisted and an officer, correct?
Correct.
Let's talk a little bit about your service. Um, let's start at the
Sure.
beginning. Where'd you go to boot camp?
Paris Island.
Okay, so the island.
Yep. Sandford Island.
Sorry, I'm looking here. Okay, okay, I see what's going on. Sorry, I'm double checking all of our stream feeds right now as people get in here.
You're good.
What did you think of PI?
The fleas.
The sand fleas, the people.
Oh, I guess the first thing that really blew my mind is the intro speech that the DI gave us, and he was like, "There's going to be at least a handful of you idiots that try to leave this island, and you'll be lucky if you get caught and not drown or get eaten by a gator." And I was like, "There's no way," you know. And within 24 hours, at least three of them from our platoon left and got caught. And I was like, "What?" um, but the sand fleas, it was another one. I said, "Man, it can't be that big of a deal." And boy, I remember I had my kill hat standing next to me one time. We was practicing for final drill, and I'm holding the rifle, and I mean he's directly at my 9 o'clock, and this little shit of a freaking flea is just biting the hell out of me, and my hands are, they start shaking. So now the rifle's shaking, and you can hear the sling slapping. And he looks at me, and I was like, I just couldn't take it. I'm like, ah, God. Right? And he was like, I got my ass chewed, but it was quite comical. That little flea kicked my ass, so they were they got quite the bite.
Uh, I'm gonna move one thing around here real quick. I know we're on live stream and it's gonna throw people off. Um,
It's
only because I want to be able to see people's chats
right.
later on. Um, so I'll have to correct a couple things here. And you'll see this in, well, I'll try to edit this out for the recorded video for you.
Okay.
Because yeah, I want people to be able to give their comments.
Right. Comments are definitely appreciated.
Good, bad, indifferent, and I'm sure
Good.
we'll get a little bit of each.
Right.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, I hated the sand fleas.
Yeah.
Uh, they definitely loved my legs, and they chewed the crap out of my legs, and I would itch them while I was asleep. Wake up to like blood on my sheets and whatnot.
Yeah. I feel like they were like made in a lab just for Paris Island boot camp because those things are just devilish in every way.
You know, I live out here in the desert, and they are out here.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. Surprisingly, they are here. It's not often that I see them though. Uh, but yeah, they do poke their heads every once in a while. Same thing with mosquitoes. Every once in a while, I'll get a mosquito here, and I'm like, "Whoa, check it out!" You don't rarely
Right.
see them here. Um, but yeah, we get a wet year. Yeah, you'll see a lot of those things. More so sand fleas than anything. Um,
Huh.
but yeah, they're like people just don't understand it. They're like a little gnat, and they just like a mosquito. They'll get onto you and just start sucking. And a lot of times you don't know it until it's too late.
Yeah, that's how they get you. They're feasting already, and you don't feel it, and it's like a delayed. Whew, they pack a punch.
That they do. That they do. Now you were Motor T, correct?
Yeah, I signed up. I got a lot of guys got this story. I signed up as '03 was the agreement, and I get to MEP station, and instead my MOS closed out. I had to go open contract, and boom, I went Motor T. So there I was. Um, yeah, Motor T. I went to when we deployed to Iraq. I went into machine gun doing convoy security, and then we had a stint, like 3 month stint. We went down to Basra, took that over, and I was driving the fuel truck and doing perimeter security when we were on the FOBs. And then when I came back, I didn't have the MOS change, but I was a PMI, so I was doing pistol and rifle coach for pretty much the remainder of the time.
Nice. I
Yeah.
yeah, I got to be a rifle coach once. Um, so what had happened was I was with a really crappy command, and we had a coach not show up, and the range safety officer said drop the senior man and they'll be coach for the day, and I was a captain. I got dropped. It was my last time I needed to qual, if I remember correctly, and yeah, so I get dropped for no fault of my own, all because one jerk couldn't wake up on time.
Yeah.
And I was the worst coach ever because I'm sitting there and the Marines are like, "What do you think I should do?" And I'm like, "Well, I like to shoot, and if I'm not on black, I change something."
Man,
Like,
I'm yeah, just I don't know his name, luckily, but there was a staff sergeant, and I was like, I was a lance corporal on the range, so a lot of times I would get looked at like, "What are you even doing here?" But I walked up to the staff sergeant, and I'm staring at, like, I didn't even have it in me to say nothing, but I'm staring at him load the magazine backwards, and I'm like, "How far is he gonna take this?" And he's on like round 7. He's pushing it, squeezing him in there, and he's like, "Coach, I can't. I don't know what's wrong. I can't figure this out." And I said, "Son of a bitch." So I'm like, maybe if you try turning them around and loading them incorrectly, they'll go in easier. I'm like, whoa. How do you uh, see some stuff out there? A little questionable.
it's funny how, like, you know, yeah, what you forget, you know, uh, the things that the fundamentals that you're taught very early on. Then when you become, higher ranking, and now you've got to retain more stuff. And I've seen plenty of guys go through those what we call grass week. For those who aren't in the military, we do grass week, which is where you go back and redo those fundamentals and try to get back into the same shooting positions and refamiliarize yourself. It's funny the stuff that you forget, and you get guys who've been doing it for years, and they're like, "Oh, I've got this," and yeah, they don't.
Um, yeah, for sure.
um,
It's like overload.
oh,
They,
absolutely,
they
absolutely.
just hacking. That's one question that I always get. Like people are like, so you weren't scared if when you did something? I said the one thing about the Marine Corps, I'm sure all branches, but definitely Marine Corps is they're gonna hit all three different types of learning. So if they're asking you to do, or if they're telling you to do something, they know that at least you know how to do. Like I don't care, we don't care about nothing else, but we know that you've gotten this down pat. And if you
Mhm.
don't, it's on you. We've audio, we visual, we've done it time and time again. So it's repetition. So, and that was kind of cool though, because there was things like heights. I was scared of heights as a kid. And
Mhm.
then uh, I remember my senior drill instructor boot kicked me, like he Spartan kicked me off the helo pads at Paris Island to rappel. So I went out and then down, and like from here to here, I didn't know. but it was not my body. But the after that and the come down, that was cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I hit the ground, and I'm like, there's so many things going on in my head because I was like, holy shit. First of all, I was scared, and then I really enjoyed it. So I'm like, I don't know what to think. So I hit the ground, and he's like, hey, recruit. He's like, did you shit your pants? And I was like, no, sir. Can this recruit go again? He's like, get the hell out of here. But it's crazy. And then, I tell a lot of people, when, because more you hear more about me, I like to spread, enlightenment. So when people ask me stuff, I tell them all the time, every time I have that thought, like, oh, I'm scared to do something, do it. Because on the other side of fear is complete freedom. And now, adrenaline junkie, for sure.
You
And,
press that nerve and desensitize
got,
it.
So, yeah.
Now,
Good
let me
stuff.
ask you this: did you ever run into any of your drill instructors in the fleet?
No, so I ran into my recruiter at I think we were at, I don't know if it was Hooters, but it was somewhere. But I was with my family because they came out, which I'm sure we'll get to. But I just got out of a coma and was in a neck brace and looked like I shouldn't be alive. And I will go to the restaurant, and I'm looking at this guy, and he's looking at me, and he's like, "Oh snap! Like, I know him." So he comes up to say hi, and like I didn't even have the life energy in me to tell him how frustrated I was. But
Mm-hmm.
the message was clear, and he was like, "Man, I'm so sorry," and I'm like, "I hope it was worth your bonus, because man, my life can't be any worse at that present moment." So it was funny, but there was like a silent apology, and he's just obviously what happened. It was like, man, I wish you the best and hope everything. But you could see, like, you could see it in his face. He's like, damn, man, I did this dude dirty. It's like, yeah, you guys are dirty. But, it is in a sense, though, you do have to kind of spin it a little bit to get men to volunteer to go, put their lives on the stake to go fight a war. So, it's part of it. But car salesmen do the same thing. So,
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. That's
there's,
I did run into my senior drill instructor, and I did run into um, not my recruiter, but the staff NCOIC of the recruiting office. So I did get to experience that. Um,
yeah.
I'm just pushing this out again. Um, get some people in here. Um,
Yeah.
there we go. Got to keep pushing these things out. Get people in the chat if they want to ask us questions or whatnot. Um, so let's talk a little bit about Iraq.
Okay.
Uh, what of how? First off, how many times did you go? How long were you there?
I was there for one deployment. I think we got extended 30 days, and so I have the OIF medal with a star for being there for two separate. There was OIF 8 Tech 1, 8 Tech 2. So they gave me a star, but I only did one deployment. So, on record it looks like two, but it was just a brief extension
Mm-hmm.
that over.
I've had I've had similar. I was out for a year, but I only got to Afghanistan. Didn't get to Iraq.
Yeah. I actually tried to. I got put on the roster after the motorcycle accident. I got put on the roster to go to Afghanistan to train the Afghan army how to operate Humvees and 7 tons, but the naval guy shot that down. He was like, man, after all that just happened, he was like, how do you think you're going to be able to go over there and deploy? I said, easy. I said, keep these Vikings coming, and all I got to drive a truck. I was like, I got that. So yeah, no, we don't think so. So too bad.
Now, where were you at in Iraq? Uh, and whatever you
Uh,
don't want to talk about this, just be like, hey, we'll move past this.
yeah, no, we're good. I was in Fallujah at first, so we were running convoys at a TQ
Okay.
with a company, and let's just say that I never really fit into logistics companies. So at every chance I got, I'd try to leave. So about 3 months into it, they asked for volunteers to go and take the city of Basra over because
Mm-hmm.
it was getting ran by jihads and they were killing all the IP out there and civilians and women. So IP would be Iraqi police if you don't know that. Um, and then yeah, so we actually once we got there, we drove like 36 hours from where we were at Fallujah to Basra, and then the British had, I guess, reign over that area. They weren't coming off the base anymore because they were scared, is at least what we were told. So we go down there. There was 44 Marines total, and we brought the First Iraqi Army Division. So I was attached to MIT Team 217, and we went down there. And our first, this was a wake up call because it was kind of chill where I was at. There was a few firefights, but not really involving us, and a few ID possibilities, but nothing really. We had one driver get hit with ID. But then when we went down to Basra, like I didn't know anybody really. We were all different platoons and such. So when we attached to the mid team, we drove down there, and I only knew the guys that were in my direct space. So the guy next to battalion, Corporal Connell was actually our platoon sergeant for that, and I didn't know him. I just knew of him from seeing him. So it's like we're a bunch of strangers, really. And we went down there. The first night we did a convoy route reconnaissance, and the highest ranking Marine we had, Lieutenant, got wiped out by a shape charge. So
Ooh.
that was the first night, first convoy in Basra. And then, I mean, I think we lost 2 Marines total. Another guy got hit with a sniper 2 weeks later on a fob. But we took the city back in 10 days, roughly 10 to 12 days. And um, we were finding caches every day of like I don't even remember the numbers because they were ridiculous. There was like for each cache we'd find, there'd be like numbers like 1,200 RPGs, 700, uh, you know, empty 155 casings, be like 2,400 AKs, big shipments, right? And they were coming across the border. So I think it's Iran and Syria down there, if I'm not mistaken. Um, so they were coming across the border every day, and yeah, that's pretty much what we were running into for about a week and a half, and then we got control back of the city. Um, right about that time, we went to a resupply mission in Basra International Airport, which where the British were,
Mm-hmm.
and while we were there, we started getting hit with mortars, and there's one the well the, my okay so my logic was I was standing in like a Connex box that was what we call Haji Mart, a little store selling DVDs and stuff, and I heard the alarms go off. So my mentality told me, they train us to say if it sounds like a Nerf ball. So if it's loud enough, just run in a 45-degree angle. So I was like, okay, well let me go outside, and if it's loud, I'm just gonna haul ass.
Mm-hmm.
So I step outside this door, I leave my buddy inside, and I'm like assessing it. And by the time I finished the thought, like, oh shit, that's close. By the time that thought was about halfway, I felt it. I felt it, heard it, and I caught the blast of it. It was 7 meters away over a Texas barrier, which is like this, if somebody doesn't know what it is. And it hit right here, 7 meters. And I was standing probably 3-4 meters on this side. And I didn't know that at the time it was that close, but I could feel it. I blacked out for a second, hit the ground, stood back up, my platoon sergeant come walking over. He's like, "Hey, you good?" I said, "Yeah, I'm good." I looked. There's no blood. I got all limbs. I was a little shaken up, but
Mhm.
there. And then I go get my buddy GH. He's there. He actually came out the comics. He's got his rifle in the air. He's like, "Where they at? Where they at? Should I shoot him?" And I was like, "GH, you can't shoot mortars, man. What are you doing?" And he was like, "Oh, I'm just checking." So I was like, "Holy hell!" And then we turn the other corner. There's a Marine that comes running out of the porta potty. He's got his pants halfway around his ankles. He's like, "Oh God, I thought I was gonna die in there." I was like, "This is an absolute mess right now." So there was only like 7 of us there, so it wasn't very hard. We were good. And then we started helping the Brits. So this group of Marines, we're the only ones walking around. There's still mortars dropping too. So
Mhm.
you got these Brits, they're scared in these little cement bunkers they had, and they're like, "Hey mate," he told my platoon sergeant, "Do you have an extra pair of combat trousers?" And I was like, "Bro, what did he just say?" He was like, "He asked you if you had another pair of pants because he just shit himself." I was like, "What is going on?" And we're the only ones that were just walking around like nothing's going on. Right? And they're all looking at us, all hiding and shit. Like, wow, these guys are really crazy for real. And we went to this pub where, yeah, they had bars there. We weren't allowed because we're Marines, can't control ourselves. But they had pubs for the Brits. So we go into this place that we just had food, and it like hit their one of the mortars hit the food ISO container, and so we helped pack it all up. Come to find out later that these guys were launching. They had PVC piping on a dump truck and were launching mortars off of it. So by the
Oh
time
wow.
they were long gone. And on the other side of the Texas barrier, in a 30-meter radius, there was, I believe, 13. It was either 12 or 13 British soldiers that died. So that was my first like, whoa, that was a very close call.
Mhm.
And ironically, since we were on Saddam's personal Air Force base, living in Tent City, there is no record of this. But when I got back and they did the after action report, he asked me if I wanted a Purple Heart, and I looked. I was like, "What? What?" He was like, "Yeah, you rate a Purple Heart since you're within 12 meters of an explosion." And I was like, I look at my limbs, I look at him. I said, "No, man, I can't take that." He was like, "Are you sure?" I said, "Well, how would you feel if you went to a Purple Heart ceremony after service and all your brothers are standing there with missing limbs, and you sitting there taking the glory with them?" I was like, "I can't do that, man." I said, "Hell no." He was like, "All right." Um, but as we'll get into detail further, a lot of people are like, "Man, if you would have took that, we would not have this many problems right now." But
Yeah. Yeah. It's
it is,
funny the politics of that stuff, you know. And
yeah,
me being an officer, I got to see it from the other side of actually doing the awards. Um,
right.
I saw some really crazy stuff with awards. In fact, um, I believe I've told this story publicly at least once before, but I'll tell it again. Um, I was with uh, I was with the meth. Okay, one meth, and we're part of the command element out there. So we got stuck doing all the awards boards. Like our staff, every night I would get a binder with like 30 awards in it, and I had to read through each one and red pen them up and check for them. And a lot of guys just kind of they were like whatever, and they would just flip through. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, but our XO was really tough on us and was like, if he goes, I want to see comments from every single one of you. So we're going through. I'm reading. I'm changing. Making grammar corrections and stuff like that. And it's all these guys. Bronze stars galore. Guys who, you know, they're getting a bronze star just because of what rank they are. So a lot of that stuff. And then they were kind of sorted by section, And I remember I'm going through this one section, and finally I get to one of the border mentor teams where we had people, they were embedded, and they were putting this lieutenant in for a NAM. And I'm reading, and it's talking, typical NAM stuff. Well, he did, this many missions, this moved this much stuff, da 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 da. But then it ends with he should be commended because the mentor team that he was with had a problem of pay where the officers weren't giving the enlisted on the Afghan side weren't giving them their pay, and the enlisted were going to mutiny, and he stood in between the officers' quarters and the enlisted, pulled his sidearm and told him, "Look, I'll go in and talk to the officers and get you your pay, but if you don't give me at least a chance to talk to them and you try to come through here, you might get me, but I'm taking some of you with me." And
Right.
because of that, they said, "Okay, we'll give you a chance." And he went in and he told the officers, he goes, "Either you pay those guys right now, or I'm letting them all in here, and I'll probably help." And he said, "You never, or the thing is, like they very quickly stood down, and
Yeah.
uh, after that, morale improved. There was now, they had a different respect for the Americans, at least on the enlisted side, and
Right.
the number of attacks and stuff went significantly down because a lot of the problems that we had were guys were getting paid by insurgents to, hey, when's a patrol going out and stuff like that, and if they knew, they would give up that information. Well, because he had earned their trust, that started significantly happening less and less. And of
Right.
course, that's like two throwaway lines at the end of a NAM citation. And I circle this thing and I'm like, upgrade immediately, bronze star, uh,
Yeah.
and like I literally walked in to my XO's office. I'm like, you want comments? Here you go. Read this. Here's the comment. This guy needs an impact award for this action alone. Give him the NAM for the end of tour, but that action requires something bigger and something specific. And he was like, "No,
Yeah.
I totally agree with you." Um,
For sure.
so yeah, you see those type of politics. Um, uh, you see that type of politics going when it comes to the awards, and you know, in some aspects it's disgusting. But then when you have where someone actually can get awarded a really good award. I've got another funny story I can tell, but I don't want to get too far into my war stories. I want to hear yours about impact NAMs. But
Some of
so
them are just blasphemous, you know. But
and was your motorcycle accident before or after the deployment?
it was, so we got back in September, and it happened that next June. So right
Okay.
after.
So you got your deployment money and bought a souped up motorcycle?
I did. So yeah.
How did I
I
know?
went great. So I got back. I I did this, even when my instructors told me not to do it, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna be the smart one and not follow the crowd and do dumb shit when I get to the fleet. Sure enough, I went and bought an M3. Didn't know how to drive stick. My buddy, my Marine buddy, drove it off the lot, taught me how to drive it. Um, Bought like $3,000 worth of jewelry, and since I could finance it, I added another $1,000 necklace for my mother. I was like, oh, this is great. Make payments, build credit, awesome. Well, I didn't really compute that, yeah, that's fine and everything, but now I don't have money to go out with the guys. So after deployment, I paid a lot of that stuff off, and I went to get another car. So I go to Navy Fed and asked them for like 16 grand. And within 2 seconds, they was like, well, we'll give you up to 22 grand if you want. And we have a service in the bank where we sell you the car. And I was like, I don't got to do
Yep.
nothing. I was like, yeah, let's go. So it was cool. I had the money. I had about 18 grand after paying everything off. So Got the car with nothing down, drove it straight to the shop, got subs, got the tints, you know, and it's like the boot garrison package, you know, you get all souped up, and then I had everything going, and then I moved off base. Guys, Pendleton guys would probably be familiar, but Escondido. So I went to look at this apartment on a Sunday with no traffic, right? So I was like, oh, this is 20 minutes from base. You know, it's nice. It's beautiful, right? I was like, yeah, let's go. Well, I didn't know that this was like a little Mexican hood, like a little barrio, you know. And that's a little. One time, one of the kids said that, "Oh, you in my barrio, Holmes?" I'm like, it doesn't really matter, but you know. So going to work, being a range coach, we had to be there at like 4:45, right? So 2 trips it took for me to do in the car and realize it's not Sunday, it's Monday and Tuesday, and these, you know, you got that base has got what 20,000. No, there's a lot of Marines on that base. So everybody comes through the gate. There's traffic. I was like, oh, we're not doing this. So I bought a motorcycle, and you know, in Cali, white lining's legal. So
Yep. Get that lane splitting in.
it was magical. I didn't have to wait. I was on time. I could party till 2 a.m, sleep a couple hours, go straight to work. It was great. So yeah, again, I didn't know how to drive a bike, and I had another Marine. We actually did a field op, and right before we left, I was like, you know what? I'm on a motorcycle. So I called my buddy. I was like, hey, can you ride this bike off the lot and teach me how to drive his apartment? He was like, sure. So ran it right back and bought the motorcycle after we got back from the field, and then that was my gift to myself. So yeah.
That's yeah, common story. I had uh, I had a bunch of Marines. They all wanted bikes. You know, out here in the desert, you can go fast wherever you want. But thankfully, I was not an anti-motorcycle guy, even though I was safety and I saw every freaking crash you can think of.
Mm.
But I had a gunny who rode, and he started taking all the Marines out to the racetrack, and he was like, anyone who's thinking about getting a motorcycle, come with us and we'll teach you. And you know, that we would get guys who, you know, they wanted to get these huge souped up bikes and whatnot, but had zero experience. And then when they got on the track, they were like, oh, this is too much for me. So
Yeah.
they would still get a motorcycle, but they would get one that's a little bit more their speed and then work their way up. And
Yeah.
you know, some of these guys just didn't know, you know, anything about the bikes at all. And you know, we had a pretty good crew, so I was never an anti bike guy. In fact, uh, for the last time I was safety officer, um, I had a group of crotch rocket riders who would do their stuff. I had a group of cruisers who would do their stuff, and I had a spousal group, and I even had dirt bike and enduro riders. So I
Oh
had
wow.
like, you want to talk about LOI frigging jobs. I was constantly signing motorcycle riding LOIs for all these guys to go do a different ride, you know. And some guys would be like, we're doing ours on this day. No, we're gonna do ours on this day. And I was like, I don't care, as long as you guys are doing an ORM. So for people who don't know, what LOI is a letter of instruction, and an ORM is operational risk management. Just that you're gonna think about being safe. And yeah, I would make them do all that stuff, which for most of them they were sergeants. It was good experience for them, but they were doing a lot of that stuff, and I was just looking over, making sure everything was good. And you know, we still had accidents, and we still had problems of, we didn't know who our motorcycle riders were, but we got it much more under control, and that was my goal.
Yeah. Yeah. It was crazy that the you know the I remember in BAS we had a whole poster, and it said uh, more Marines die by motorcycle accidents than IEDs, and that
Yep.
was like poster came out in '05 when IEDs were like, you know, number one.
Yep.
for deaths over. And
Uh,
I was like, I don't war deployment. I was like, well, that's just stupid. That doesn't even make sense. Why would they do that? And then I remember after the accident staring at the same poster, and I was like, man, my ID card is supposed to be on there.
Do you know what the most dangerous rank in terms of mishaps is in the Marine Corps? Off-duty mishaps.
I'm gonna have to go with Lance Cooley, but I'm not
Unless,
sure that's accurate.
unless if it's changed in the last several years, it's Staff Sergeant.
You get complacency kills.
Well, no, you're still young enough to be reckless, but now you got money to be reckless with.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That valid point. Yeah.
I was at Quantico, and I got to know the guy that ran the motorcycle safety there, and they'd given him the job because he was in a horrible motorcycle accident, and like had a big old scar through on his head, and I got to talking to him one day, and we were talking about where we were from, and he was from the Detroit area, and I'm from right on the Ohio Michigan line, so we grew up very not far from each other, and
All
he
right.
was like, here's how crazy. He goes, here's how crazy I used to be with my motorcycle. He's like, you've made that drive from here to Detroit. I'm like, yeah, done it plenty of times. He goes, so I've made that trip in less than 4 hours, and that's a 7-hour drive. And he's like,
Mm.
I'm telling you, he's like, in Washington, Pennsylvania, when you get on the turnpike, there's this point where you have to do this hairpin turn, and you have to go 25 miles per hour. He goes, that right there was the only time my speedometer dipped below 100 the whole drive.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you
Yep.
see Marines, and he was a staff sergeant, so
Yeah. And it's crazy because I was calm on a motorcycle. I had guys. I tell people all the time my average speed was like 135 in Cali, and there was always Marines around me, going faster, standing on their seat, just cruising. Guy, we're doing about 130, and he hopped off his bike, and he's got his feet on the highway. And I'm like, bro, if not for nothing, I mean, I get your back, but if you just happen to screw this up, I'm going with you. I was like, we can't have this. So, but it's so hard to explain. It's really not. I guess when you go through it, it's not. But when that adrenaline that hits you when bombs and bullets are flying past you, and you're constantly, this might be my last minute if I don't pay attention. Like, that adrenaline is unmatched, and the closest thing you can get to that is a motorcycle. So once you feel it, and then you feel that motorcycle, and you're like, oh, it's like worse than heroin for us, So, not that I mean, I didn't never done heroin. I'm just saying, once you start, don't stop. So,
I hear meth is good. I've never tried it, but
it,
I've seen people lose teeth over it, and there's not many things I would lose my teeth over, but
right, right. Those two never really made much sense to me. After all this, I love my plant and my holistic herbal medications, but it's still, even with it being so illegal, it's still very. I had my mother earlier call me a drug addict.
I'll
what?
tell you, here's the circumstances where I will try heroin. If I'm like 80 years old and I'm diagnosed with terminally ill cancer, I'm going to be like, you know what? Heroin sounds pretty good right now. Let's try some.
Yeah, yeah, that would be a good fit, and I guess if you're in excruciating pain, but
I do want my epitaph to read, died while saving children from a burning orphanage.
There you go.
Regardless how I die. I'll end up having a heart attack on the toilet like Elvis.
Oh man.
I do want to get into a little bit about what's happened post service and what you're doing now. Um, do you want to talk about what's going on with you right now?
Yeah. So I mean, I'll go into detail more about the accident so
Sure.
people get a full, because this I tell the stories to a lot of people, and a lot of times I find myself telling the story, and I'm watching their face, but I'm feeling the same way. And it's so great because I'm like, oh shit, this did happen. Yeah, like that did happen. And it's kind of crazy. But so the accident, if you guys were in Pendleton, where Oceanside Highway meets 78, and then you got the on ramp to the I-5. So it was that intersection, and long story short, I passed the car at the red light. So there's a car, my arm's in the way, but there's a car, red light. I don't remember none of it. It was all witness reports. I passed, the light turns green. I passed the car. I'm in the middle of the intersection. 2001 Yukon XL blows the red light, T-bones me, and I had a girlfriend at the time on the back of the bike. I bounced off the windshield and land like this. Well, I'm sure it was outstretched, but judging off everything I broke and the reports, I landed like this. So these snap in half. My clavicle broke, scapula broke, C6 and C7 broke in my neck, T8, 9, and 10 in my spine. My helmet was crushed, and then all my ribs on my right side broke in 2 different places. I punctured my right lung, and my left lung collapsed. So there I was bleeding out, and the girl on the back of the bike, she went over. So I guess I tried to save it, and they said I did like an endo right before I got hit. So I guess my thought process was, oh shit, I need to stop this bike. And I just slammed on the brakes, and the momentum threw it forward. But that motion really saved the girl on the back, because she went through the passenger window, hit the dude in the face with her helmet, and they found his blood all over the truck. But she was hanging out the window from her waist down, and they hopped on I-5 and drove 1.2 miles, parked the truck, and got out and ran, threw her under the dashboard. So a witness followed him and was able to call the ambulance for her. So we both get medevac, and in that process, which I didn't find out, none of this I didn't find out till later, obviously, but I was in a coma, for a medical-induced coma, for 12 days. Quantico called my mother, told her that I would not make it through the night. She had to go to California, so she got out there. And what's interesting is she said that the hallway was lined with Marines. Later found out not one Marine above the rank of sergeant was there. So it was very apparent to me that they did not give a flying fuck. Right. So, and because this is where it all gets a little bit tricky. So, once my mother gets to California, I make it through the night. Then they tell her I'm probably gonna be paralyzed from the neck down, and then they told her I'll probably have to relearn how to walk, talk, eat, and do everything all over again. Which in many ways I did, but I gotta look at the paperwork, but it was roughly around 23 to 22, 23 days later, I walked out. Like, when I got out of the coma, I had the number one neurosurgeon, the number one ortho surgeon, and the number one trauma doctor on the West Coast in La Jolla. So that kind of adds subs. I mean, when you hear, it's not just like you go to the VA doctor, you hear these guys say everything, but these guys were like known for what they did. So when you hear it come from, a little bit different. And I remember when it first hit me, like, I woke up out of the coma. The cop was sitting here with his wife, who responded, the first response officer. My mother was there, my grandmother, my uncle, and I think that was it at the time. So, they tell me the story, what happened, and it didn't really. I just, like, I don't know. I was just like, okay. I'm like, all right, cool. And not that I was okay with it, but I knew 2 things. I knew I couldn't really move, and I knew that it didn't really matter how I felt about anything because I was not able to do much. I didn't realize my neck was broken, because I couldn't move. I was pretty heavily sedated. I had a epidural, a trauma epidural.
Hmm.
So, I say all that to like 2 days after the coma, the nurse walks in and asks, "Hey, you want to get up and see if you can walk around?" And I said, "I don't know. You tell me." So he's like, "Yeah, come on." So I put my arm around him, right, and I get up and I'm shuffling like a 9-year-old man. My feet are not even coming off the floor. I'm just shuffling feet, and I'm like, whew, I feel it. These ribs are just floating, and we do like a little walk, and the neurosurgeon is walking down the hallway to come see me. I didn't know at the time, but all the papers he was holding was just like this. I mean, the stack is, you should see my medical record. It's ridiculous.
I bet.
And he's holding it, and my first thought was, damn, that's a lot of papers he's holding, not knowing that those are all mine. And he's looking through something, he's walking, and he looks up and he like double takes and almost drops everything in his hand. And he's like, oh. And he stops me, he's looking at me, and I'm like shuffling. I'm like, "Doc," I said, "Was it really that bad?" And he was like, "Was it really that bad?" He's like, "Let me tell you something right now, kid." He said, "You are a walking miracle." He's like, "Do you understand that?" And I was like, "Not really." But, it sunk in later. But at the time, I didn't know what was going on. So I get out of the hospital, and I walked out the front door. They wheeled me to the front door. I stood up and walked out the front door. And, like I tell people all the time, yeah, I'm a badass. Marines are badasses. But something like that is, I don't have any cool stories because I don't remember, so I know that I transferred. I mean, my heart was, they pronounced me, I don't think I was certified dead, but my heart stopped 5 times in ICU. So technically I died 5 times in ICU. And, I don't have any recollection or memory of like seeing the light or seeing angels or none of that. But there's definitely been messages afterwards that have like proven to me, because you hear people like, "Oh, well, that means you got a purpose," or, "Oh, God's got a plan for you," or you hear it, but you're like, okay, what? I mean, I get what you're saying, but there's been actual like events that have happened after that when it's like God is talking directly to you. I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
I did that, and you are here because of my will, and I allowed that to happen. It's like, whoa, I don't want no problems, So it was very moving, and then that was really like the first day of my new life, So I had to like, in a lot of ways, relearn everything. So I'll go straight into the after effects of that. So I had, even in the hospital, I had a 6 months treatment plan from my trauma doctor. She went on a 2-week leave and specifically told the covering doctor not to discharge me because she had a 6 months treatment plan. So I had no motion in this right arm at all.
Hmm.
I couldn't because it was broken. Everything was screwed up. So that covering doctor didn't listen to a word she said, discharged me 2 days later. And then, they take me to Coronado, and the Navy asked me if I wanted a medical retirement. So I asked him if I could get some time because I just got out of a coma 2 days ago. So he said, "No, I need to answer right now." And I was like, "Well, shit." I was like, "What does the recovery look like?" And he's like, "I could probably get you back to 80%. I was like, "That's a good number. I could fight wars at 80%. Right? So I'm like, I love being a Marine. I love what I'm doing. Yeah, let's go. I could do it at 80%. Never saw that guy again, ever. Never, not one time in my life. Right? So they got the signature. Okay, this guy's a dumbass. He don't want to get out. Roger that. So then I go back to, they actually asked my mother to, so this is where all the fun starts. They asked my mother to stay in California to nurse me. So they paid for, first they put me in Del Mar on the officer hotel because it was nicer. And then they realized, you know what, we're paying too much money for this, and he's enlisted, so he doesn't rate that anyway. And we're messing with our officers that are actually going there and have to see this broke dick crawling around, that doesn't. Right? So they was like, you know what, we're gonna move you to the enlisted one on main side. So we get in that room, the freaking ceiling's coming down, there's mold in there. Not where you want to be at when you just puncture along and you're trying to
And
get
you
your
just
life
saw
back.
my video that I pushed out about the Sergeant Major talking about that, didn't you?
Really,
Isn't that
I,
the one?
I
I thought I sent it to you this morning. Yeah, I pushed it out on Instagram. He got it handed to him in front of Congress about the living conditions aboard Pendleton.
Oh, I did. I saw. I think I got too excited about halfway through it, honestly, because I was like, "Oh yeah," but I didn't get to catch the end of that. But yeah, it's terrible, man. It's terrible, and people, barracks rooms I've been in just mold, so not the best living conditions. So fast forward, like I forgot how it goes. You might remember, but there's for every 4-year enlistment, you're allowed. If you get injured, you're allowed like a 3-month medical leave or something, and it's like only one is granted every enlistment. So I had 3 because I couldn't move. So and I would go out every day, and my mother's goal was to get me to walk around for an hour, and I can't even tell you how many months it took me to do that. I'd walk around 5-10 minutes and be like, whew. We gotta go. I'm like, I'm about to pass out, and then I would lay down at night, and she would have to like hold my hand, lay me down, and you would hear the like bouncing off each other and ting 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 ting. It's very weird. So anyway, come to find out that whole time, so there's 3 separate blocks. So I forgot. I think it was like 3 months each. So that would have been 9 months I was out of work, whatever case was. I don't remember. But when I went back to work, obviously I was in the hospital all day, every day, pretty much doing occupational therapy and such. So one day, Wounded Warrior Regiment on Pendleton calls me and asked me. She said she was a retired Staff Sergeant Navy officer. She said, "Hey, can you come in and talk to me?" And I was like, "Sure." So I get there, and she says, she's looking at me very, very odd, right? And I catch it, and I'm like, she's like, I'm sorry. She's like, you, she's like, this person right here who had all these injuries, that is you, right? I was like, yeah, it's me. And she was like, wow, okay. She's like, I was not expecting this person to look like that. She's like, you don't look like you just had all this done. I was like, well, I don't know what that means because I can feel it. Right? So she was like, I was just expecting a much more physical, ailments. So I was like, yeah, I don't know. So she asked me, her next question was, she's like, do you know that you were supposed to be here with us, for the last, she's like, what was it, 6 months? She's like, you're supposed to be here in the barracks. I said, no, this is the first time I'm hearing that. And she was like, really? I said, yeah, really. She's like, so tell me, where have you been? What have you been doing? And I told her, the hotel room, they transfer hotel, this and that, and then they put me in a barracks room. This guy's a pig, it's terrible, right? And she's looking at me like, is he really saying this? And so I get done, and she's like, well, I'm gonna tell you right now, you're supposed to be here. She's like, but your commanding officer, has denied the request. So we're about to send him another one. She's like, but I'm guessing that since he denied the first request for orders, she's going to deny the second one. I said, yeah, probably. That sounds about right. So, yeah, so that happened, and then
they took steps to throw you out, correct?
What's that? Say that again.
They were taking steps to separate you, correct?
Correct. So, so the female on this, and it took me a while to feel comfortable with it, but I've done a lot of self analysis, we'll say, and I feel guilty. But the girl on the bike, when I met her, she was married to another Marine, which I was completely against that whole thing that they do. That seems to be a trend, which is crazy because once I get to the end of it, you're gonna be like, what the fuck? So when they asked me, we weren't. At first, we were friends. Then she got divorced, and once I saw it was, for sure, then I entertained the fact. So now at this point, she's divorced. But in their head, they're like, "Oh, well, this is, ammunition for us to unload on them." So you're right. That with those two pieces of facts, so the medical denying, and then the fact that she was on the bike, I think they was like, you know what, we're gonna turn on him. So this is how it started to unfold. Mind you, I'm completely clueless. I thought, everything's great. Hoorah, Semper Fi. I'm fighting for my country. This is wonderful. So, um, yeah, she pretty much convinced me. I don't know if it's true or not because I've heard I met somebody that knew them after that whole thing, and she swear up and down the husband wouldn't do it. But the way the girl explained it to me convinced my heart that this man was brutally beating her every day and recording her, and if she wasn't pretty much left right, she would get her ass lit. And I was like, I can't really, my moral conscience can't just allow that. And if that's what he's doing, then you're unbecoming of a Marine anyway, so piss off. So that was my take on it. And so long story short, that's how it started. They took actions. So what did it for me and them was they switched out my which I found funny when I got back from the hospital, or when I came out of the hotel situation and went back to my unit. The first day at work, I remember two things. I remember my combat boots feeling like kettlebells, and then I remember my I forgot his name, Bronny or Bronick or Staff Sergeant or Gunny Bronick or whatever his name was. He was a good dude and a good staff in CIC for S3, right? So he was good to go. And I was actually like, all right, great, because I know this guy got my back, so we'll get it all situated. Wrong. So I get there, and as I'm pulling up to the CLR1 headquarters, I'm seeing him leave, and he sees me, and he's like, "Oh, hey." He's like, "Oh man, I'm glad to see you. I'm glad to see you. Oh man, like I'm just so happy to see you here, like this and that." He's like, "But unfortunately, like I gotta go. It's like I just got orders. I gotta go over here." And I didn't put two and two together there at the time, but something told me to hang on to that bit. Like when you do something and your subconscious tells you to snapshot it for memory, it was kind of like that. So they switched this guy. So Master Gunnery Sergeant Jacobs was my catalyst for this. So he comes, and like a day or two later, or something like that, and I'm sitting in the office, and he walks in, and he was like, "Hey, you Lance Corporal so and so," and I'm like, "Yes, Master Guns, hoorah, kill!" I was highly motivated all the time. So he looked at me. He said, "Oh," he said, "I fucking hate you." And I was like, I looked at my sergeant over here. I said, "Hey, I don't need to answer that, do I?" And he said, "No, not at all." I was like, "Okay, roger that." So I was like, "Well, all right." Never met this guy in my life. So their tactic was after that, anytime I would be addressed, it was like, "Hey, motherfucker, hey, piece of shit, come over here, sit the fuck down, shut your fucking mouth, shut your fucking cock trap," just like any time I was talked to from somebody above the rank of sergeant, this is how it was. So I was like, what the hell's going on? And anybody that serves with me will tell you exactly who I was. And I didn't, at first it messed with me, but I started walking around at the end. I said, you couldn't convince me that Chesty Puller would show up right here and tell me that I was a shitbag. I was like, are you out of your mind? Anybody that's ever served, still to this day, they say the same thing. Oh, all we know is if anytime we left the wire, we wanted you with us because we knew without a shadow of a doubt you were going to take care of it. No matter what it was, you got it. And I was like, you're right. Because whatever I got to do, that's what I'm going to do. And it didn't matter.
You want to know what's funny is I had that exact same thing happen to me. Um, I was at this unit, and I had to go away for like some training and stuff. And when I came back, I had a new boss, and this new boss was like, he gave me, like, I didn't get 1 inch. Everything was, he was very cold to me and all this stuff. And
Yeah.
I was a lieutenant at the time, and I happened to talk to the mass sergeant, and I was like, did I offend this guy or something? And he's like, oh, you didn't hear what happened? I was like, no. He's like, oh, when the major was leaving, he talked a lot of crap about you to this guy. I was like, oh, okay. He goes, so he doesn't like you because of that. And I was like, got it. Fine. I was like, well, I'm just going to keep doing things. And he goes, yeah. He's like, yeah, sir. F them. Keep doing things the way you've been. He's like, you and I, we keep this place sane. I was like, okay, thanks, Top. And we kept going, and it was probably about 2 weeks, and finally I get told, hey, stay back tonight. I want to talk to you after everyone leaves. I'm like, okay, yeah. And my new boss was like, yeah. So the major told me that you were a schemer, and you were trying to screw everyone over, and if he told you to do something, you would do the opposite. And I was like, really? And I'm kind of like
Right.
chuckling. He's like, I've been watching you. He's like, I've been watching you close. He's like, you kind of have a good handle of things. I'm like, look, that guy had some issues with me, because when when he was doing something, I would say, sir, this is not right. And I said, I also knew how to, CYA, cover your six. And which I did another video about this week. I go, but yeah, so I knew he was. I go, that was all projection. And you can talk to the mass sergeant, you can talk to anyone else. This is how I am normally. And he's like, well, if you stay like this, we're gonna be just fine. And thankfully, because we were kind of stuck with each other for a long time. It all, after that day, we were fine. We worked really well together. But it's
Right.
funny because that happens all the time in the military, where you get these guys who they have to bring other people down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's sadly more common than what it should be. So
Yeah. I
so
always
I don't
I
mean to
remember.
interrupt you. I just that
No,
rang
no,
true.
you're good. Glad you brought that up because it just. I've been talking about this for a while, but it hasn't been exposed. And even me, I would be there in their face to, like there are so many details. I mean, I don't want to sit here all day, and I'm sure we're gonna work together, so it'll come out. But like one example, we highlighted 13 different times that I was promoted to corporal in the MOL system, and I took it to this guy, this Master Guns, and my platoon sergeant, being funny, used a pink highlighter, and he was like, "Here, show him this and see if he'll pin you." So I go in there, and I'm like, excuse me, Master Guns, but blasey blasey, this is the paperwork. I've been telling you that I rate my promotion, and this shows over the last year I've been promoted in the system 13 different times. So he grabbed the paper, he looked at it, he crumbled it up and threw it on the floor, looked at me and said, "Listen, I will not promote you to corporal. Get the fuck out of my office." And I was like, I'm sorry, what? So like these things happen, and a lot of people, either don't like to talk about it or it's not as popular. So when we do talk about it, it's like, oh, well, obviously, you had to do something. No, it's not all the time. And you just enforce that because it blew my mind how, and then hearing like Brits talk about us and Iraqis talk about it, like the Marine Corps is one of the most, if not, I mean, I don't ever say it is the most, but to many people it is. We're the most feared organization on the planet right now. And when you're in it, you would think that.
Are you there?